Sure, and you had your press badge.
Our press badge,
yeah.
I've been using it ever since. It opened more doors than anything.
I'm sorry we asked you to take it off early this morning, but it's,
well, it's
I don't think I've ever seen you without it.
Yeah, it's my badge because it gets me in places. I mean, people know me, but a lot of people don't, so the badge gets you. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
And they get a lot back by letting us in and do stories for them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's a back-scratching situation with businesses as well as just, we're doing a big thing on Step Up, the new organization.
Valerie.
Yeah, Valerie's doing one.
She a go-getter?
She is really, I worked with her before in her previous life.
Yeah,
and
a care team.
Yeah,
I know
so
her well.
she's, so we're doing a big special on her starting in April. She asked us
Good. Well, we want to get her on the show, Bill.
Oh, yeah.
Please.
She's a good speaker.
Since you're with her often, and we've had her on many times for Care Team.
Yeah.
But would love to get her on this.
She'd love to be on sometime between now and the middle of April. You need to get her on because she needs all the publicity she can get.
We will.
For this big, she's got a big fundraiser coming up.
That's tremendous. We will make that happen. And you guys stay so active in different fundraisers, Bill. I know.
Well, you and me together. I mean, between us. I mean, I ran last year. I don't know, $80,000 worth of free publicity.
Oh, easily.
And you do too, I'm sure. But I mean, that's part of us giving back to the community too.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And you know, we took on the school board. Remember when we thought it was an illegal election? The local board said no, it wasn't. So we took them to the state and sued them in the state election board.
How'd that turn out, Bill?
Well, they had 7 lawyers. We had none, and we won a unanimous decision.
Is that right?
Just and then they actually sued us in the Supreme Court. Which, you know, it was it was $645 million, give or take a few million, that we were sort of taking away. But we said if you'd run an honest election, we'd have kept quiet. But that's not honest. And the Supreme Court just last week called me up and said, we're not going to even hear it. That you won unanimously, and that's going to. So they can.
What are they going to do about that?
Well, they can do in 2 years. They can do it again, but they have to wait 2 years.
Is that right?
Yeah.
They couldn't do a special election, or
they could. Well, the only way they can go now is up through. They could go to a circuit court and actually sue us. But you're talking 2-3 years. By that time, you just can go and have a new election.
Sure.
So, and we've taken on. We had this boatominium down in Merle's Inlet, where the man was putting up 100,000 square foot.
The guy out of Florence, yeah.
Yeah, and he was going to move 100 boats back and forth across that little 2-lane road.
Near Blaine.
So we did a big editorial, put a beautiful picture of Merle's Inlet. I have a place in Merle's Inlet, so I was very concerned.
That's right, you live in Merle's Inlet.
And showed the boat and a nice dock and just the marsh, and said, let's keep Merle's Inlet pristine. 2 nights later, they had 600 people come sign a petition.
Wow.
And by the weekend, they had 1,000 people sign the petition, and about a week later, the doctor dropped his option. So, I mean, and now they're trying to change the law that you can't build huge box in Merle's Inlet. You can build it outside, but not in Merle's Inlet. So we take on things like that. I mean, that's one of the things that, and you do too.
No, not as often as you. And of course, this is a non-commercial show at some level. But those are non-commercial issues you're talking about.
Yeah.
Normally, I wouldn't. We'd want to be talking about the publishing business in general.
Yeah.
But of course, you have taken on
we've done that ever since we've been here. Yes, way back when I found an old clipping where the chamber appointed me the head of transportation, and Cecil Brandon was my vice president.
Is that right? Back then?
Yeah, that was back in the dark ages when I just moved here. But I was concerned. We got John Rhodes and I, the new mayor, and we got the airport moved from Crescent Beach down to the airport.
I don't think I knew that. You got it moved from Crescent Beach to where?
Because it was down to the military. You can imagine the fight we had with the military.
Right.
They said, Bill, we wouldn't mind if we were a transport base, but we're military with guns and stingers, and so we had Ed Young, the first Republican ever elected in the state, I think, and we got Strom, and we got it moved.
Wow.
And it's because it's been there ever since. They told us in 6 years we'd have to move, but Strom said, oh, no. And then when they tried to leave and sell it to us for $150 million, Strom said, oh, no, give it to him. Well, we missed Strom, I'm telling you. He had clout that you couldn't believe.
Yeah.
And so he really we wouldn't have an airport where it is today without Strong.
I've heard Ed Young tell that story about a number of times being up there. And
you had Ed on the show.
Oh, many times.
He's a great.
Yeah, we need to get him back down. Of course, he has homes here in Garden
City.
Yeah,
I know he does.
Right over down near the little restaurant over here, over on the water. And he tells that story so well about the airport piece with
he saved our grits, because I mean, North Myrtle Beach Airport now, it's still just outgrown itself in its present state, to tell you the truth.
You mean the Grand Strand Airport?
Yeah, Grand Strand. I mean, in the summer you can't move up there hardly. So, but I've always been concerned. As I say, I flew drones in the war. They use them for target practice.
You were a pilot yourself, Bill.
But I was a ground pilot. I mean, because the planes were targets, called radio-controlled airplane targets, and they shot them out of the sky. And that's when I worked with Von Braun. He came over here secretly, undercover, and they picked my unit. We had a pretty good unit, and we flew for the first missiles ever shot in America, invented by Von Braun. But we couldn't mention his name because he was here illegally.
Is that right?
Yeah, because he'd worked for the Nazis.
Right.
But it was either us get him or the Russians get him. So we got him. But you couldn't mention his name, and it was exciting.
When were you able to begin mentioning his name, Bill?
Well, after, they said, after some years, I called them and I said, can I mention that I did work with Von? Yeah, I guess everybody knows it now, Bill.
Right.
We finally made him a naturalized citizen after, but it took a while. Because he was, I mean, all those missiles that landed in London, those were Von Braun's.
Wow.
He thought them up. And of course, we had to get that technology, and they had to test it. So they were. I'd fly my plane. I had to fly my plane like 20 miles away because you can't just do it online like we do with anti-aircraft.
Right.
And he knocked one down, and it landed in the University of New Mexico's campus.
No.
And we had a tough time explaining that one, I'll tell you.
Wow, Bill,
Luckily, nobody got hurt, but they woke up the next morning, and there was this little crumpled plane with a missile half in it.
No way.
Yeah, interesting.
Stuff you'd never forget, Bill.
Well, yeah, and we had to kind of cover that up because it was top secret. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. He was BBR, burned before reading. That's how secret it was. Right.
It's so funny, Bill, when we think about Horry County Publishing, we just got a couple of minutes and time's flying, but obviously starting there with the, was it Field and Stream?
No, actually it was just the Horry Herald. A chain bought the Herald out. The Woodard family had started it, and when old man Woodard died, he loved the publishing business, but his two sons, they loved the printing business, so they said, we're just going to sell it.
Yeah.
So when we took it over, I think it had 1,400 subscribers and took in $15,000 a year.
Wow.
It was pitiful, and we had a hand-fed press. I mean, I felt like I was Gutenberg there for a while. And after I finally built it up in 6 months, I called my publisher, and I said, gee, he said, Bill, you're doing so well, just go out and buy whatever you want. So I went and got me a press and everything. Right. And when I left, it was the biggest weekly in the state, and we were doing 6 figures a year.
No.
So I said, if I can do that for him, I should be. So I started my own publishing company.
What year was that?
55.
55.
Yeah,
so
but I ran the paper for 50 hours, and I ran my magazine for 50 hours.
Wow.
Wasn't much sleeping in there at that time.
No.
But it seemed to work out.
Later gave up the paper and just did.
Yeah. I worked for him for 2 years, and then the last year I just did both, and then I started the magazine while I was working for him, which he let me do that, and it did quite well. It went all the way up to a 200-page weekly slick in color.
200 pages a week?
200 pages a week in color. Yeah. Well, I had a staff of I had other businesses too. I was in real estate, and I had the biggest rental company called Reservies. We did a few million a year in that company. So we had 29 people working for us. And I'm like Greg Everett. I've got so many corporations.
No, they're all very small. That's right, compared to something like that.
Yeah, well, it really it got up to $2.5 million a year, so it did work out. Could have been pretty good.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and we're still publishing it.
I know. Coast is out every other week now.
Yeah, we're fortnightly, and we go in, and I'd say 90% of all the motels and campgrounds. And locals always say, Bill, I never see Coast. And I said, well, unless you go spend the night in a motel, you wouldn't see it. I said, strictly for tourists, and Alternatives covers the local market in Horry, Georgetown, and Brunswick. We try to cover the 3 counties.
Absolutely. Bill, I hate to say time has blown by, and I wanted to highlight some of the other amazing things you've done, but 25 minutes have disappeared.
Yeah, we always find lots to talk about, Greg, that's for sure.
We sure, of course, love that profile of you as a Veteran of the Week.
Well, thank you.
A couple of years ago, Paul Gable took the time reading about Von Braun and others. That was a real treat. Thanks again for getting in this morning.
Oh, glad to do it. I'm no good in the mornings, but you at least made it afternoon.
It's been a great morning. Stay tuned to more Carolina People with Bill Darby coming up next. Think about that, over 50 years in the publishing business in Horry County, often considered very controversial, ups and downs along the way. Still made a lot of great friends in the business and seen a lot of amazing changes in the area. Think about that. 1955, Launch and Coast, the experiences therein, and of course even time here before that with the Horry Herald and the other publications in the area, the excitement to see something grow from $16,000 a year to well over six figures a year. It's an amazing process. We didn't get to hear Bill talk about the Strawberry Leaf Forensic Society or being the president of 3 fraternities there at Clemson and the amazing awards that he won over the years, as well as so much more time in the service. It's incredible the differences that can be made in a lifetime. We've seen them in Bill Darby. You'll see them in many others. Tune in to enjoy Alternatives Magazine online at myrtlebeachalternatives.com.